Hi, Miss Cox. I'm Mallory Good, and I am the principal at Troop Middle School. It's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Um, to start off the interview, I'd like for you to tell me a little bit about yourself.
Okay. My name is Lisa Cox, and I've been teaching for over 20 years. I have experience in several grade levels. I've taught second grade, and I've taught fifth and sixth grade, primarily language arts in those two grade levels and reading. And early on in my career, I had 1 year in PE.
Oh, that's awesome. Um, if you were to describe your greatest strengths and weakness, what would that be?
I would have to say that my strength is probably building relationships. I believe that that is critical for your students to be successful. They have to know that they can trust you and depend on you, so that when they come to you with a problem or they come to you with needing help with something, that you're going to help them every time. So I think that's important.
That's a great strength. What about your weakness?
I think probably my weakness is trying to do too many things. I get excited about the learning, and I want to give the kids as many opportunities as I can. So I probably overdo that at times.
Um, I understand that completely because I want to give the kids as many opportunities and tools as possible, but you never want to outwork yourself or overdo things. Um, so tell me why you became a teacher.
I became a teacher because of, well, two things. Number one, my love for students and children in general, and also just the love for learning and acquiring new knowledge. I've always felt it was important to pass that on to everyone, and I also try to do that even with my own children, just making sure they have that same love for learning that I have.
That's awesome. Um, so why do you want to work at this school?
This is a school that has a good reputation, and I hear a lot of great things about the administration here, as well as the teaching staff and students. I hear that the campus is rated an A, and all of that appeals to me because I like to win, I like to be the best, and so I want to be a part of a campus that believes the same thing.
Um, I like that answer a lot. At our school, you even mentioned this earlier about building those relationships, and we take that very seriously. It's very big on our campus. How do you plan on building those relationships with the students as a new teacher on campus? Sometimes coming in, that's a little bit difficult when they already know other teachers and they're close with those teachers.
Because I feel so strongly about building relationships, I think I would probably start before school ever started. Um, I would probably try to make contact home and get with the parents, talk to the parents about their child, ways that I can be of assistance, things that the parent thinks the kids need. Take note of all of that, as well as try to get in their hands pretty early on an interest inventory and maybe even a learning style inventory so that I can see before they ever get to me the best ways I can reach those students.
Okay. If a student were to describe you and your teaching style, what do you think that they would say?
I think they would say that I am all around the classroom trying to facilitate learning, that I'm not someone that enjoys standing up in front of the group and giving out information. I want them to discover the information on their own. So I try to give them tools to do that, and they get to work in small groups typically and try to get to the end of it or solve the problem or acquire the knowledge independently.
I love the idea of the student-centered classroom. I think that's awesome. When I come in your room, I'm going to be looking for things like that, making sure that the students are engaged, that you're moving around the classroom, not just standing in one spot, monitoring your students. Small groups are great as well. You want to have a little bit of small groups, whole group, and individuals, so I like that you included the small groups. So describe your lesson planning process. What do you do when you are beginning to lesson plan?
Okay. First, I'm going to take my scope and sequence that I would have for the school year, and find out where I need to start. Look at the objective. Look at the standard and find out which standard I plan to teach that day. Write my student learning objective for the day, and then look at what materials best fit that standard and how I could best teach that standard to the students with those materials.
Okay. I like that you said standards and objectives, because that's another big thing that when I come into a classroom, I'm looking for, making sure that it's posted on the board, making sure the students are aware of what they're learning. I always ask the students, what are they learning for the day? And so that's great. I want to make sure they're posted. I want to make sure they're up to date. So some teachers like to post them and then keep them up all week, but they might not be learning about that same thing. And so up to date on the objectives is a big thing, and something that I've taken into consideration when doing walkthroughs and observations. So one thing that I look for when observing or completing walkthrough is how the teacher uses higher order thinking skills in the classroom. So can you tell me how you would do this in your classroom?
So I really believe in using some Bloom strategies, and I think that I could regularly incorporate two of those things, which is to synthesize as well as evaluate. And so when I synthesize, I typically have kids create something new from learning. It might be something really simple for the day. It could be something big that we work on for a while. Also, I believe with writing, being an experienced writing teacher, that we evaluate each other's work. We don't necessarily know whose paper it is, but we may look at a piece of written work from another class period or from another lesson and let the kids say, how can we make this paper better? So we're using that evaluation tool a lot in the writing process.
That's awesome. That's another thing. I've told you quite a few things that I look for when coming in the classroom. That's one thing that I make sure that I document is higher order thinking skills. Are you asking questions that are higher level, not yes or no? Making sure that they're describing, and like you said, creating is a great Bloom's method, and evaluating. I like that as well. What do you think of technology in the classroom? And if you could provide some examples of how you would integrate it in your classroom specifically.
A couple of things in the writing classroom that I would use regularly would be a document camera, so that again we could put that writing, piece of work up there. It can even be out of anything we're reading. Like if we're reading something, I can put that up there, and we can look at it on the document camera. We can decide, why is this written correctly? How could we make it better? What adjectives could we use? So the kids could actually go up to the interactive whiteboard, use their tools there, circle adjectives they like, circle adjectives they think might sound better in the written piece of work. We could use work from their classmates. We could use work from other periods. We could use work from other years, as well as just the reading that we're looking at. If we had something that we liked in there, we could put that up. We could talk about it and respond to that written piece of work as well.
That's great. We actually have document cameras for you to be able to use in your classroom, and it'll stay in your classroom. So once you check that out, then you can use it for the entire school year. And then there's smart boards available for every classroom as well. Those are already up and ready to go. Other technology you will be able to have a MacBook. And students have MacBooks as well, so those are some other things that you could incorporate when you're using technology in the classroom. How do you assess your students?
I would say that I assess them daily. I want to know that they have gotten the information for the day, especially on days when I'm teaching something new. So we could do a real small, quick assessment where I'm just asking them one question, asking them to respond. I could have them write a sentence based on a structure that we've learned that day for writing, just for me to make sure, if I am teaching in a positive, did they get that? I'll have them write one. Can you write me a sentence using a positive? Then I'll go around, double check, make sure everybody got it. If they didn't, I'll confer with that one child, see if I can't get them to the right way to write in a positive so that I know they've got it. And then other than that, I would say weekly, We would have small assessments, probably 7 to 10 questions, just again, double checking that they got the information. For my bigger tests, they're probably every 3 to 6 weeks period, and that's going to be when I spiral information, what we've been teaching since the beginning of the year, making sure they're still retaining it, and using that information to drive my instruction.
That's great. I like that you included the daily assessments as well as weekly and your unit assessments or non-week assessments. We need to make sure that our students are understanding, and you're checking for understanding daily so that we can make sure the students are learning, because that's the ultimate goal of school. Okay, so how would you use student data to drive the curriculum and planning as well as classroom instruction?
Well, when I do these tests that I get towards the end of the 6 weeks, 9-week grading periods, I would take that information and see how the kids did on each objective. And then I probably would even break that objective down by standard and say, which areas did we do really well in? And are we hitting that mark to be prepared for our STAR assessment? And if I have areas that I feel like the kids did not get that content, like we're way off target on that, we were below 50%, then I feel like that's on me as the teacher. I need to go back and say, how did I teach that? Go back and review my lesson plan, see how I taught the standards, see if there's a better way to do that. And then, again, continually spiral that into my tests so that I can say, we're getting better on that. We're maybe not where I want to be, but we continue to grow as students, and so I would continue to assess those and try to improve along the way.
That's great. We use DMAC at our school. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but the students can upload their tests into DMAC, and then it'll run reports for you. So we use those in our PLC meetings. And if you are planning with your subject, that's a great way to look at those standards, like you said, and be able to put that back into your teaching, like reteaching and spiraling, like you mentioned.
We use Aware in my previous district, and one of the things I really like to do with our students is let them set a goal. Mm-hmm. So I didn't, I wanted to be 85%, and this is what I got. So how many more questions do I need to get there, and which areas was I close in? And let the kids kind of document that so that they can watch themselves improve through the year. And I think that is motivational for them. They're motivated to do better because they like to watch the progress.
I agree. I like that goal setting. I'm a person that wants to achieve goals. So if I set a goal for myself, then I'm motivated to go and achieve that goal. So I'm sure it's the same way with the students. And so that is a great idea to incorporate into the classroom. If most of the students in your class failed, you mentioned earlier about spiraling and reteaching, but if most of the students failed in your class, either an assignment or a test, how are you going to respond to that? Are there any other methods that you might use?
I think that's a direct reflection on my teaching. If I look at the results and most of the kids didn't pass, then I need to rethink what I'm doing. So I don't want to expect them to change. At that point, I've got to look at myself and think, what can I do to get better? And how can I get that information out there so that the kids can be successful? What was it that I used, in my lesson? What was their guided practice in that lesson? Was that tool strong enough? I can look at what was their independent practice throughout the times that I taught that, if I taught it multiple times, and then I can rethink that and look at what other resources the district has available. Maybe the resource I have for that, didn't go as I planned, and I can go back to the district and say, hey, what else do we have available to teach this particular standard so that I can try to make that better.
That's great. How do you make sure that you meet the needs of a student with an IEP?
I believe that is pretty straightforward. I think that number one, I have to follow what's in the IEP, so I think that's critical. But I also have to differentiate. Not all learners are the same, So I want to make sure that I am reaching those learners based on whatever it is that they have in their plan, whether it be a student that's special ed, 504, gifted and talented, whatever that kid needs, I want to be able to differentiate and provide that.